I don't think you guys even heard any of that cool music that I had going on back here. Hold on one second. I got something going on in my ear that won't stop because I'm out here trying to do a little bit of Wake Up West Coast. It's lunchtime. I'm your host, Leland Best, coming to you from BCB Live, hanging out in my studio on the Shiawassee River out in Corona, Michigan. I come out here every Monday at noon Eastern just to hang out with everybody. But if I don't push this button right here, see off to the side there, if I stop it, I blow it up. A couple of weeks ago, I came out here to do a broadcast about networking. And when I did, I forgot to start the dang broadcast. It happens every now and then out here because there's a couple extra bells and whistles we have to use to create a broadcast on Get Vocal. But the reason I come out here isn't to necessarily broadcast out to the planet. I come out here to network with people. We come to sit into a hot seat that allows you to come in and out whenever you want. So if you've never seen the platform before, you can usually just head over to getvocal.com and see stuff going on the front screen. There's a welcome room for you to come hang out. But we've been hanging out here since October, just getting to know the platform and see what it's capable of. Haven't heard a whole lot on what's going to happen next. So the guess is as good as the next. So I'm just going to open up the seats. If anybody wants to hop in, say hi. We're going to start a discussion and see what's going on this week. Come on in, Colin. I know you were just here. We had a conversation going before everyone showed up. And now that we're broadcasting, we're just going to kind of take these conversations to wherever they lead us. What were we on? Android phones, I believe?
We were talking about the availability of two-letter domains.
Oh, that's right. Absolutely.
Which, of course, domain squatting has been a thing for years, right?
Yes.
And of course, Google has a new thing now that will pretty much eliminate the value of domain squatting. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
They're now doing typo correction in URLs.
Oh, nice.
So if you go and type something in, like
like Get Vocal.
Yeah.
So are you saying if I type in Get Vocal, it's going to correct the spelling and take me to Get Vocal?
Well, that's the thing. That's what's interesting to me about this, because it's clearly not going to be actual typo correction, given all the names of startups that have removed vowels from their name just to get a domain that is available. So it's not actual typo correction, but they will take something that you enter for a typo squatter domain that you might legitimately want. You never know. And then switch the spelling to the domain name of a more popular domain, which is theoretically a correct domain.
Yes.
Which is crazy because
I wanted to lock that down for a second, Colin, not to interrupt, but I'm just going to let the people know who are watching. I'm only closing these seats for a minute so I can get a little deeper into this conversation with Colin, because it is an important one for those in the industry of domains. But carry on with where you were at there, Colin.
So, arguably, this is a very bad thing. And it's not an extension. It's built in. It will be built into Chrome, apparently. I imagine you could turn it off, but most people won't. But it's another mechanism by which Google will yet again control where people end up going, even if they intend to go to your domain, which you've chosen with a slight misspelling. Which is not necessarily a good thing. But no, we were talking about it in the context of Weight Watchers changing their name to WW. And having acquired the domain name www.com.
It's insane that they have that.
Yeah, it's not clear. I mean, I don't know how long they've owned it. I guess we could go look it up. I'm on a mobile device, so you can probably look it up more quickly than I can.
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now. What happened when Colin mentioned it, he said they have a 2-letter domain. And I'm like, yeah, they probably had it all this time. He says, yeah, but 2-letter domains haven't been available for like 25 years. So how did they get this domain? Well, how long has Weight Watchers been around?
Well, Weight Watchers have been around forever, but I mean, they've been around since before the web was a thing. But
yeah, exactly.
It still seems like they probably weren't sufficiently savvy as to acquire www.com back when it was available initially. Yeah, so they must have paid up big bucks for it.
It says you can still get them. As to how you would ever get, because what is it? There's only so many combinations.
Right, but it's 2-letter domain, a secondary market.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because people were charging hundreds of thousands of dollars for these things at this point. So they probably paid maybe $1 mil or $2 mil. I mean, www. It's almost as valuable as www.com. Probably the only case in the world where a 2-letter domain is less valuable than a 3-letter domain.
That's a good point. And I just got to ask, have you ever had, you mentioned domain squatting, which for those people that don't, I'm going to leave the seats back open for this conversation because it's kind of relative to anyone. Have you ever had a domain squatted or taken from you in the past, like where you had a brand that you knew the rights would only exist for that brand, for that domain, and then somebody else buys it up for no reason?
Yeah, well, I had how did this work? I had these domains that were auto renewing, and I guess I had a credit card that had expired on set up for the auto renewal, and it didn't go through, and I didn't notice. By the time I did notice, I found that someone else had acquired one of the 3 domains that I had purchased that were my full name.
Really?
So now there's an artist of my name who owns one of those 3 domains.
Really? Well, I used to own bestatmobile.com. Okay. And I've had the domain since 2012, and I used it to build a mobile app business. And in that, I even took it outside of that and was using it for all. I had it branded. I had webinars. I had brochures. I had traffic. I had a website. I had a Twitter page, a Facebook page. This is where Best at Mobile is now. It's a landing page on a Japanese domain website. Somebody snatched it up last July at cost, and basically because of that same reason, I had a credit card on file that was not available to clear the annual payment on it when it came due. It went, I didn't even catch it. It went beyond my radar somehow, and I didn't see it go offline. And I went to go check on it like a month later, which is you get a grace period. Even though you don't pay for your domain for a certain amount of time, they'll give you a little bit of grace. But after that, you lose your domain to the pool again. And that was what happened. And the guy bought it up in the pool. So my own mistake, but now I'll never be able to rebrand that domain. I've tried sending emails and phone calls and everything to try to get my domain back. And they're basically going to be like, yuck, yuck, yuck. You're never going to get your domain back. So
the moral of this story is any domain that you own within reason, you're better off auctioning it off rather than just letting it go, because the moment you let it go, someone is going to grab it and sell it for, even if it's a $5 profit, that's $5 you could have made. But most of these things go for quite a margin at this point. Oh, hey, Nazim, how's it going, man?
I think I muted him. And I don't think you can unmute it. It's really loud where he's at right now.
Yeah, he's in a subway station, I guess.
So he's just listening in. That's my friend Nazim Beltran over in Milan, Italy. Well, actually, he's down in Genoa right now. He's on the train taking the weekend. Yeah, on his way to Genoa.
What do you mean your friend? He's my friend.
He's all our friends. When I say my friend, he's the guy.
Apparently not. No.
He's the guy we talk to on the phone with our freaking shirts off in bed in the morning and at night, trying to figure out
what's going on. Other way. You're pointing the wrong way.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Nazim's actually a U.S. and Italian citizen. So for those of you who don't know Nazim.
That would have been so much funnier if Nazim had pointed the correct direction.
All right. I can't even get that to happen here.
There you go.
I had that little dummy of mine that I used to point at people. Where is he? I don't think he points in the right direction either. He's here somewhere. There he is. I use this guy as an overlay every now and then. He can point at you, Colin, but that's about it. He can't point at anyone else. So, yeah, domains can be a trick. It's a good business, though. I mean, I was in the business of selling domains for a while back in like the 90s. I was trying to make
it was a very good business back then.
Can't do anything with them now. They're almost worth it. What are they selling .coms for, like 88 cents a piece over on Namecheap right now?
Yeah, but I think most of those are encumbered with, you must buy a year worth of hosting from our hosting operation or some such thing.
But that was the other thing. It's so cheap nowadays. Everything.
It's still pretty cheap. I mean, back in the day, you used to pay $55 per domain per year.
Yeah, easy. I'd get letters in the mail. 8,550. Did you ever used to get those all the time too?
No, so this was back before the advent of multiple domain registrars.
Yeah.
Back in the early '90s, when Network Solutions was the government-appointed domain registrar.
Yes.
And or I guess they were appointed by the
FTC?
by DARPA, I imagine.
Oh, really? Yeah, you'd be right. I think you're right.
Yeah, there. And so they had that contract for many, many years, from like 1984, 83, 84. The first domains were used, I think, about then. So they were charging like $85 and then later $55 per year per domain.
Coming down in price until we
got. Well, I mean, they realized that, because their contract was coming up for renewal, and eventually they lost the contract, and GoDaddy and a whole bunch of other outfits came along. You know how much it costs to get into the domain registrar business at that point?
No, I don't.
$100,000.
Really?
You pay $100,000.
Franchisee?
Some effective. Well, no, it's not a franchise necessarily. You're a top level domain registrar, not a reseller for somebody, but an actual registrar that maintained your own separate infrastructure. You could apply to do this. I think you paid $100,000 or $150,000. And you were able to, as part of that deal, acquire something like 10,000 domains of your choice for business
so you became
purposes.
a millionaire overnight. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not back then, but now, sure.
That's interesting.
It's kind of amazing.
Because
again, that's true of any of these things. When you look back, oh my God, look what people were doing back then.
Yeah, I would agree. There's so many things I wish I would have got into in the 80s and 90s that I didn't think about were going to make it big. And now you look at them and it's just, wow.
Oh, yeah. Like in 1980, in 83, you hear from IBM and they say, we've got this snazzy new machine. It's designed for, small enterprise and personal use. We're calling it the PC. Look at this thing. It's underpowered, not enough memory. Too slow, disk access sucked. How could they possibly support the number of people they wanted to sell this thing to? There were engineers that looked at this thing and said, no, we're not going to port our software to this ridiculous platform.
Yeah. See what a domain goes. Let's find out what would happen if we put in a www.com and do a domain appraisal calculator with GoDaddy. GoDaddy says that domain's only worth $25,000, Colin.
Really?
Yeah. Well, more than 25,000.
Well, that can't be. Oh, okay. 25,000 plus. All right. Well, bear with me as I go check on exactly how they acquired this thing.
WB sold for more than 25. WT sold for more than 25. We.com sold for more than 25. That's all they give you, though. That's not enough info. They're just being conservative. Let me head over to a different domain appraisal site. Now, you got to be careful with these things, folks, because not all of them are even close to accurate.
I would never trust the domain appraisal site. I mean,
no, not a free
domain is it's just like the housing bubble, right? A house is only worth what people are willing to pay for it, and what people are willing to pay for it is typically related to demand, and there's not enough turnover in these things to create a real market. So
see this number?
If you find a domain that you want, you can't assume that everyone else is going to want it or that they're going to want it all at the same time. So you can offer as low ball price as you want and not have a big problem.
See, this one gives you a pretty appraisal certificate and everything.
Yeah, I would
make it look all fancy and take the money so that you can. Well, this one actually says the www domain $646,152.84. So that's a pretty accurate figure for someone who's just guessing, but that's all these are. These are just evaluators based on number of letters in the domain, common domain names like cat, dog, food, whatever, it doesn't matter. Anything that's a more commonly searched term on the internet. One word, two word combinations with no hyphens, things that are spelled correctly versus incorrectly, like we have here at Get Vocal versus VOCAL, all that type of stuff. And whether or not even your words work well together. Like I have a domain called Megabit Marketing. Well, marketing is one thing. Megabit, well, you can't really combine those two to form a collective thought, but it's a brand, so it's irrelevant. But the brand itself wouldn't be worth much as a domain because it's very selective niche that is specific to a trade. It's not like something you could sell like dogtreats.com. You could sell to just about anybody, and people are going to eat it up. So what do you think about that? I mean, where do you find most of the money in domains nowadays when it comes to people buying?
I wouldn't trust anyone who purports or any company that purports to provide an appraisal.
I would agree.
If they want to guarantee that they're going to sell something at a given price and they're willing to pay that amount, that's great. Mm-hmm. But if someone's appraising it and not actually giving you an offer of that amount, it's as good as the paper is printed on.
Right.
I mean, back in the day, I had a random email from a guy who said, I have a client who wants to pay $11,000 for your domain, falconcom.com. Now, I had a company, Falcon Communications, at one point. We were building white box computers. I thought I was going to be the next Michael Dell, Built a couple hundred computers. They've got a nice little Falcon emblem on them and all this good shit. That was back when I was in school. Left school, got a real job, and got an email saying, we want to buy your domain for $11,000. And I said, like a moron, I said, no, it's not worth it. I will hang on to it. Do something else with it. I've done nothing with it. I still own it.
Oh, man.
I probably paid, $1,100 in registration fees at this point.
Yeah.
But, you have to decide what it is you want to do with your domain, and it's only as valuable as your use of it. And anyone who gives you an appraisal means nothing. You can't. It's like an appraisal on a house, right? You have the housing bubble, right? We appraise your house for this amount. Well, are you going to offer that amount? No. We expect someone else to pay that. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Nazim asks a good one. Do you guys always get emails from China regarding Chinese domains for your current domains? I'm not sure exactly whether you mean Chinese names of your current domain, so you're kind of a little confusing there, Nazim. Can you give me a little more clarity there? The other is, how much is Christian.com worth? We don't know. Let's see. We could check them all like for that, because you never know what's going to pop
My
up.
Understanding is it was in the mid hundreds of thousands.
I'm sure. No, 1,000,009. 1,000,009 right now. That's what that domain is worth. Let's see. Let's try Jewish.com. Let's see. I got to check all these. I got to.
So the thing to know about foreign domains.
Oh, I've reached my daily limit.
Every country has a top level domain.
Yes.
Related to their 2-letter country code.
Yep.
So .uk, .cn, and so on. And every country manages their registrations differently.
That's true. I always forget that too. I keep thinking it's a global entity that manages these domains, but it's really...
So there's ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers,
yep,
that manages IP addresses, and I believe they manage the domain registration process, as in the process of assigning registrars.
Yes, that's
so there are multiple registrars
you
out
pay
there
each time you buy a domain. Yeah.
So there's an ICANN fee, right?
Yep. 18,
which is a percentage of what the domain registrar charges. It's something like 50 cents or $1 or something. It's not very much per domain, per renewal.
I pay like $13 for my domains, and they add 18 cents to them for the ICANN fee. That's it.
I don't know. I think mine, I pay
like
$8 for my domains, and they pay 50 cents for ICANN fees.
Really?
So maybe it's a negotiated thing. I don't know.
I'm gonna go check. I'll go fire one up real quick.
It might be a negotiated thing per registrar. I don't really know.
All right, I got something I want to ask you. But go ahead, continue yours up.
So I was saying about international domain registrations. So
yep,
every country does different things. There is a Caribbean island nation, the nation of Tuvalu, who owns the .tv domain.
Interesting.
They have, and my understanding is all of those funds go directly into the national treasury of Tuvalu. They charge something like $50 a year for .tv domains. But there are a lot of, and of course that was very popular back in the beginning of broadcast.
I wouldn't mind having one. I'd like to have a .tv domain actually, but they're $25 still to this day to get them.
Oh, really? Oh, that's better than it was.
I think they're 25.
But yeah, it's still perfectly reasonable if you've got a media empire you want to protect.
Yeah.
Periscope uses a .tv domain.
So if I want actually, that's Canadian. If I want my name .tv in US, that would cost me about $40 some. No, $29.88. I'm sorry, I was looking at Canadian a second ago. So if I wanted LelandBest.tv, $29.88. Interesting. But the TV, like the .clubs, the .cos, I can get all those domains for under $10. I can literally get, and they are, like you said, you get them for a year, and then you usually pay the premiums, which are anywhere from $12 to $30 some based on whether it's a simple name, like the .lifes go for $25, the .lives go for $30 or $20.
Now, these domains that are not international country codes and are not .com, .net, and .org, I could really question whether you want any of those .live or any of these.
Yeah, I wonder about those.
There was a point at which ICANN allowed any registrar to decide that they wanted to register top-level domains of any name. So as an existing registrar, you could simply say, I want to manage all the .live domains. I want to manage all of the this or that. And provided no one else has claimed it, my understanding, and I don't have this 100%.
No, that's fine.
I didn't research this before we started talking about it, but my understanding, my recollection is that they just handed those things out. There was a big deal about this in the very late 90s, I think, early 2000s, where they were talking about how to manage the number of new domains people were applying for, new top-level domains people wanted to create. And at one point, they simply said, okay, you can create whatever you want. And that's basically what happened.
They did give them carte blanche, but I think what I'm seeing is there's only still a few. I mean, I try to keep all mine as .coms. I've tried the XYZ. I've tried the info domains. I don't get the big push with IO domains. What's that all about? There's like this.
So, all right, so it's just like output is all. It's just like Tuvalu, right? Yeah, they were lucky with their country code, and so they capitalized on it. .io. The idea here is when you're dealing with developers and you've got a piece of middleware, a middleware software as a service offering. IO's typically in developer context stands for input output.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with a middleware service that takes some input and delivers some sort of output. And so .io is a logical choice. But basically someone decided that, we've got this whole new top level domain and we can just grab all of the useful, meaningful words out of this domain and start using it. And that's what they did.
They did. Because
there's API.io. API.com hasn't been available for years. So the availability of API.io was a great boon for somebody.
But isn't that also a possible potential to be seen as another type of domain squatter that's trying to capitalize on someone else's brand or name?
Well, you see that all the time. It's like Nazim was saying, we see you own this domain in .com. Do you want it in .cn? No, not really.
Yeah, I usually used to scoop up the .com, the .net. And I think it was what was the other one at the time that was .org. Yes. So I would usually
I do the same thing. When I choose a company name, the first thing I do is look up the domain.
Yes, absolutely.
And
I failed at that a couple of times in my life.
yeah, that's never good.
No, it's not. I did it with Best at Mobile actually because someone on Twitter had the Best at Mobile handle, and it is no way even. I don't want people to go see that, so I had to change it to Best or BCB Live Video on Twitter and Facebook, just so that I could keep the brand awareness, but not force people to look at some stuff that I didn't want them to find. Like some of it was just raunch, and I was like, man, I don't want people to see this stuff attached to like my brand name. So I gotta reconsider. I may even rebrand again over time.
I'm not sure if this is the case anymore, but there was a point at which Twitter's stated policy was if you own the domain, you can acquire the Twitter handle of that same name.
Really?
Now, I'm sure that was meant only to relate to domains that you'd owned previously to someone grabbing the Twitter handle.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure whether that policy is still in effect or not.
Well, that was the other thing, dude, I wanted to bring up too. Whenever you speak about something you're working on and you're deciding what it is you're going to brand your concept as, you may want to go out and grab those domains before you speak them out loud. Because I brought up Livestream USA and On Air Live, both in conversation, and went to go get the domain that day, and someone had grabbed them the day I spoke of them. I've got the proofs, I've got the tech, I've took the screenshots after my first attempt to say, yeah, I'm going to be doing this, because I even formed a Facebook group on one of them and everything, and said, yeah, I'm going to go grab the .com. I swear to God, I think somebody went and grabbed the domain before I got a chance to, because I brought it up in conversation, because it was a good domain, and it was just one of those things that happens. So you got to be careful. Don't ever give away.
Yeah, well, a bunch of these guys with large, TV guys and large podcasters like Joe Rogan and so on. This happened with Stephen Colbert and with Bill Maher and so on. Yeah. They would mention some domain name as part of a bit, as part of a joke, and they had not registered it. It was immediately registered, and usually. For sure. Usually by a person who watched the show, so of sympathizing political interest. So it usually came out with came up with something reasonable. But so now Colbert and the guys over the Daily Show, they always register the domains that they mention in any sort of bit, even the joke domains. And then, of course, they own them, so they have to use them for something. So they sell merch and that kind of thing.
It cracked me up when he did that church site, and he actually came up with some church, a world church of something God or whatever, and he
took the church of taking your money or something. Yeah, it was great.
And they raised freaking over $1 million on this website and he gave the money out to people who really needed it, and they did that same thing. They've done it several.
A charitable donation of some kind, but it is entertaining. It's amazing. And Colbert was one of the first guys who really capitalized on the power of the internet in terms of mobilizing people to do ridiculous things. And he's good at it to this day.
He does. And out of any of the talk show hosts out there, I can't spend the time, I wish I could, to go through them all, but I just get a kick out of those who are out there to do better rather than do worse. I see so many people using these broadcast platforms and domains and whatever. I mean, I'm kind of going off the track here, but it's only because the domain is the brand that people see in most cases. People are out there Googling stuff all day long. And as they do, the only thing that pops up on the screen is that domain name, because that's where it's usually attached to first. So when people grab these domains out of spite or out of a means to cause havoc in the internet societies, just trying to make things rampant. I've seen so many examples, I can't explain myself in that, but I think you get in your head what I mean when you think somebody could come up with a domain counter to a thought or anything, that when people search things, they build an entire website based on that .com. Okay, I think there's just a lot to be said of the power behind a .com or a .net or a .org that a lot of people don't realize. So how do you think it affects us in a thought?
Well, I used to be one of those guys. There was a time when Microsoft had an advertising campaign. This was, I don't know, maybe 2000, 2001. They said, "We are the way out." And it was an enterprise marketing campaign where they were basically trying to say that Linux sucks and no one should use open source software because it's a cancer and a virus on society, and we are the way out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
treat
of
it
course,
like a
I
cult.
registered
Exactly what they did.
weareonthewayout.com and a couple others and redirected them to Microsoft because I was such a nice guy.
So it has a political advantage in cases too that you can use it for. Absolutely.
I mean, there's value to every domain. There was someone who owned superbowl.com, and they lost it to the NFL because the NFL had an existing copyright on Super Bowl as it relates to sports. Now, the way that they could have avoided losing that domain and being required to hand it over to the NFL was if they had put a picture of a giant pot on it and said, "This is a Super Bowl."
Yeah, right.
That's all they needed to do.
Exactly.
They could have just left it at that.
That's like me. Here we go. I'll go to this site here as an example of what I ran into. Okay, this is draftall.com.
Yeah.
It's now like fire up the phone, mdraftall.com. I haven't actually looked at it on the phone. It looks like something's depreciated on the MySQL. So they've got some problems over there with their databases. But that was my original domain for a drafting firm that I ran back in the 90s called Draftall Inc. And it was draftall.com was my domain. And in the end, I sold it for peanuts because it wasn't worth anything to anybody, but the football leagues picked it up as, you know, those draft fantasy football type sites. So with this, so you never know when a domain name is going to have a different purpose than what was intended originally either. I'm sure there's several examples out there that you could throw on the screen that would be used for one really cool brand, and then somebody finds it later after it's been decommissioned and use it for another brand. So it's an interesting pool of
yeah. If you go back to the early 90s, you can find all sorts of examples of people buying up domains, .com domains of really popular brands. And looking back at it, you can't imagine why these companies didn't go and register the domains themselves. I think McDonald's.com at one point was owned by someone other than McDonald's Corporation.
Yeah.
But there are bunches of these, and the articles are probably still out there. Where was I going with this? Right. So at that time, this must have been like 94, 95. There were actual lists. There was a guy who was maintaining a list of all of the instances where he saw a domain used in advertising, like on a sign or on a TV ad or something. And it was a manageable list. For like 4 years. He maintained this list, and it was reasonable and sane to do so. I think he gave up on it in like 97 or 98.
Did you see where the POTUS won an award back a few years ago for the fact that he had domain squatters using the Trump name on several different domains like Trump Mumbai, Trump India, the Apprentice type references and such, and using domains all across the internet? And literally $100,000 is what he was seeking, which is the maximum damage allowed by most U.S. courts when it comes to domain squatting. But he did manage to get 32,000. No, Donald Trump, I'm sorry. He registered the domains related to real estate mogul. It was a Brooklyn man who did it, and now he's got to pay Trump $32,000 for squatting on his name on a couple of .coms. That's an extra.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, all he needed to do is demonstrate use of the name Trump outside of real estate, which would have required him putting a deck of cards as a picture on the domain.
That's right.
You know, this is how copyrights work, right? You can copyright something within a context.
Yep.
And so if you simply use the name in some other context, you're fine. Yeah. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but that's my understanding of how that works.
I went into that aspect too, but here it says in 2010, Young rejected $100 per domain that Trump's lawyers offered him. That's all they wanted. They just said, we'll give you $100 for each domain right now. for the ones that you made because you have them. We want them, but they got his name on them, so we want them. He said no, and then he gets sued for 32 grand and ends up having to pay. That's what happens. But I had
sort
a
of
domain.
backwards.
I own civilcad.com, and I'll bet you right now that one's still active. Let me go over and see. Because there was actually a software company that came out. Oh, no, that one's closed up. CivilCAD. Okay, they only use 1D now. This is CivilCAD by Sim and Design. I owned civilcad.com because I ran a CivilCAD industry business for 15 years out of my home. And this was one of those times where I had somebody approach me and say, hey, we want your domain. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. 10 grand. Okay, maybe we don't want your domain. It was like they just didn't want to pay for it. And in the long run, they probably got it and ended up using it. It's not being used right now because it has the 2Ds. And at the time, it was computer-aided design and drafting. Most people used that as the acronym. Now it's kind of shortened to just CAD, which is computer-aided design. So you don't see it so much in normal nomenclature, but it is one of those things that
I actually had the world's worst timing in domain registrations.
Yeah.
There was an online forum called Avogadro or Avogadro. Avogadro, I think.
Avogadro.
And it was sort of like the 4chan of its day.
Yeah.
And 4chan had not really become a thing at that point. I think it exists. They existed concurrently, but 4chan was just growing at that point. So I went out and I thought that's a neat idea. I should create a forum where people reveal evil plans and plans to rule, ridiculous, like Pinky and the Brain type evil plans to rule the world. Right. So I bought evilplans.net, ruletheworld.com with a couple of dashes. And this was in August of 2001.
On your door the next day.
So this was August of 2001. I said, okay, this was in poor taste. I also bought warblog.com.
No, not at all. What?
Which I never used.
Wait, go back. What was that last one?
Warblog.com.
Warblog.com.
Yeah. Country's been at war ever since. It was the perfect timing, but I didn't use it. I was stupid.
Somebody else has got it. Nope, it's not being used.
Yeah, I know. I still own it.
Temporarily. Oh, you still own it. Okay. I thought maybe you got rid of it. Well, what could you do, man? We could come up with something for Warblog.
Well, yeah, it'd
be making a ton of money right now.
Well,
you could just highlight. All you would have to do literally
I don't want to
curate content from the
API.
I see
how difficult it is to run publishing empires these days. Look at the Washington Post and the National Enquirer. Apparently, it really sucks to run a publishing empire.
I guess. Just bring in API feeds from all of these networks that are all pumping war feeds onto a website with the .com and throw some ads on it. You could probably make a fortune.
Yeah, well, if I get some free time, I might just do that.
Give me the domain.
But no, I had this vision where I was going to go and see if I could partner up with a bunch of embedded war correspondents back at the time.
Okay.
But never got around to it.
Wasn't going to work, huh?
Well, I was too busy. But that's the nature of these things, right? You try to find the things that will be the most rewarding, most satisfying, make the most money, or whatever your criteria is, and you set aside everything else. And
well, I heard that Google doesn't really care much anymore about what the last 3 letters of your domain are, but then there's others that say you got to have the .com, you got to have the .net. Obviously, it's for recognition purposes because people think first off, where do I go on the internet? What's their .com? What's the .com? That's like the question everybody asks.
So right. So here's the thing: in non-electronic media, it comes in handy, right? Mm-hmm. If a buddy of mine has a sort of rule of thumb when he's investing in startups, if he goes into a loud bar and someone speaks the name of your startup, the domain name, or just the name of the company, if you can understand it in a loud bar, that's a good name.
Yeah.
If you cannot, no good, right? So, things without vowels and things with, all of these popular ways of rearranging names to fit them into .com domains. Mm-hmm. doesn't really work in any sort of offline media, which is okay if offline media is not your marketing media of choice. But in the real world, and this has been true since, I don't know, 2005 or 2006, it doesn't matter how long your domain name is, because nobody types it in, right?
Right.
If you can Google for the name of your business, or even if you enter the name of your business in a URL bar, Google will come back with a result that gives you a sane, route to the target domain. So you're right. Domain names themselves haven't mattered for many, many years if you don't expect your user base to ever type them in.
Yeah, I used restoration-and-disaster-recovery.com. Was one of my best domains in use ever because it was so keyword structured and oriented. Every page was something based in the fire, restoration, or water damage industry. So when I used restoration, and it was just one of those things that was what people searched for, was restoration and disaster recovery. So I used the whole thing in my domain, and it worked perfectly. Everybody was jumping all over the domain. But
at the same time, if someone spoke the name of your domain, they wouldn't realize where the hyphens are supposed to go in, or would just skip them or whatever, and it wouldn't work. But again, it doesn't matter. That's how SEO is screwed up one way or another. But way back in the day, yes, it used to matter how many letters were in your domain, whether your domain was an actual word, whether the actual word relates to the keyword search that people entered, and so on. But yeah, realistically, domains haven't the actual domain that you have hasn't really mattered since like 2006, 2005, 2006.
Yeah, and that's
what does matter, strangely, still is one of the most and I'm sure most people who are watching this are familiar with how Google PageRank works. One of the most valuable domains to be linked from is Wikipedia, for obvious reasons. So if your company has a story in Wikipedia, that's the single most valuable thing you can have in terms of SEO. And by that same token, the Wikipedia guys have become have really cracked down on stories about certain websites. Now, I've had 2 clients who had stories about their businesses in Wikipedia that linked to their domains, which was great for them. Phenomenal. And it works great. At the same
what about
time,
backlinks from domains? I have to bring that up because I remember sitting and seeing Google specifically come to the point where they saw so much manipulation of backlinks to other sites, and people selling backlinks to other sites that were really, had no relevance to the content of the site they were backlinking from. So where's the stance now in the SERPs when it comes to backlinking? Is there really any?
I think, as you say, they've cracked down on it. It's difficult.
More organic now.
The common term for this now is link farming, right?
Yeah.
And so, you can't really get away with it. If your site is recognized by Google's algorithm to be a link farm, you're dead. You're dumped into the alternate index, which means that you basically don't show up on the first, second, or third pages now of Google results. But they'll say, well, we've indexed you. That's great. But it's very difficult to get back out from the alternate index back into the main Google index. So don't be a link farmer. But most people know that, I think, at this point. Yeah. I had a domain where, going back to Wikipedia for a minute, I had a domain where I was doing a sort of a top 10 list kind of thing, which was new and novel at the time. This was in like 97 or 98. And so it was like a Letterman style top 10, except it was an infinite thing, right? Top 265 ways to know your lawn gnomes are out to get you, that kind of thing, right? So we did this, and somebody, a fan, I guess, put a story up on Wikipedia about the site. Unfortunately, the story was so badly written that the editors just ditched it. And so I went back and rewrote it and fixed it up to make it sound sane and so on. They wouldn't have it.
Back up.
They wouldn't, because So if ever you do manage to get a story into Wikipedia, make sure it's written really, really well, or else you're dead in the water.
So where is the extent of how people can edit Wikipedia now? I know it used to be as contributors, you could just go on to just about any site page and add information to it. They would kind of work through the reference points that you give for a bibliography, but where does it stand now? Is all that information being
I've not
scraped
written
out?
anything for Wikipedia in many, many years.
Yeah.
Back in the early days, I wrote a couple of articles. I don't know whether they're still attributed to me or whether they've been modified. I can't remember what they were at this point. But it was about, I think, startups or something. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, some techie sort of thing. It's very difficult you can't become an editor anymore. There used to be that you could simply volunteer to edit a topic and you would be assigned that role. I don't think you can do that anymore. I don't know to what extent contributions are reviewed by editors before they're approved. But this, again, we can blame Stephen Colbert for, because he actually he got things like the Indian elephant or Asian elephant or something page locked down because he instructed people on his show to go and edit the page to say something that was like absolute, on its face, completely untrue. And people would go in and change it, and then someone would change it back, and they'd change it again.
Oh my gosh.
So Colbert has done some social good and some social bad.
Exactly. I was going to say, I didn't do
Ultimately.
anybody any good favors.
But I don't know what percentage of pages are locked down to the point where you can't really contribute to them. But I think most of the pages that you'll go to are, well, I mean, you'll find out. You can just go to any page and it'll allow you to log in and edit the page or not. But there's a percentage that are completely locked down. MediaWiki, which is the software that Wikipedia uses, is really a phenomenal package. It does some amazing stuff. It used to be, do you know Crunchbase?
Yeah.
Crunchbase used to be built on MediaWiki, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they built some new platform for themselves, I don't know, 2 years ago maybe, but I think it used to be built on MediaWiki.
Really?
I don't know if about.me is still built on MediaWiki. There are a bunch. I mean, it's amazing what you can do with MediaWiki. It's an awesome package.
Yeah, I'm on Crunchbase here with the Crunchbase Pro. This is a whole nother.
Yeah, they did something entirely different. It used to be MediaWiki.
Flipped it. Yeah, that's wild. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
But I think about.me is still MediaWiki. Let's see. That's the one that does like domain about pages or something.
I've got my About Me page right here. I still got my shades on in that one.
Does it still look like MediaWiki? It used to be be MediaWiki, but
no, I haven't really seen the whole page. I don't think you can just get to the About.me, can you? Oh yeah, you can. Oh, out of mine, it keeps going back to my default. It's redirecting it. If I do a search and I try to get to About,
it allows. Oh, they're charging now for this. What are they charging for?
Which one are you talking about? The Google About Me or the
About.me? I'm looking at their pricing. They have a free plan and they have a paid plan. Your page on your domain will be featured with features that will set you apart. Connect a domain.
Yeah, you can do that now too. I just use that as like even here on Get Vocal on my profile page, I used my about.me/Leland Best link. Anywhere I get a bio that I need to fill in, I just leave that link. I say, if you want to find out more about.me/Leland Best, and people can follow the link and get to that page. And I have my bio listed there. So that anybody...
this is one of these companies that jumped on the social media aggregation craze back when that was a thing. And I don't know how many companies have survived besides these guys in this area. I remember several dozen of them back I don't know, 2007 or so.
Yeah.
Where they say, well, here, set up a page and then link all your social media accounts. It seems like a really bad idea.
I just did that.
Especially for in this day of identity theft. That seems like an extremely poor choice.
Man, you make a really good point, because they were offering a bunch of free .cam addresses recently. And what that came to be in the end, and I went ahead just to see if I could get it. It actually registered the domains for me. So I have lelandbest.cam and bcblive.cam. But when you get to them, that's exactly what they are. They're just social media web pages. I'll get out of the way here. So you can generate this look about your networks and have a title for a form that people can fill in to get a hold of you. It's kind of lame. It's really nothing at all. That they basically accept the cookie, and you can add a couple of pages to it. But you can see here, it's the my.cam is the network. Well, you can't see that graphic.
In the real world, this is what you want to do. Go register yourself a domain of your choice, build up your brand using that domain that you own, you control.
Yep.
And there are plenty of free hosting places that will let you host your site reasonably at relatively no cost. And you're basically doing
$2 a month,
static
maybe
HTML or whatever, which is fine because you don't really have anything unless you really have something that you're expecting to make money with, in which case you can afford to pay to have your domain hosted somewhere with whatever services you need. But go get yourself a domain, build up your brand that way. Don't rely on any of these social media sites to, be your landing page. Your YouTube channel is not your landing page. Don't mistake it for one.
right.
Same with Periscope or any of these other things.
Let me ask you this. What do you feel about using subdomains of your own domain to point to your social networks? Or like I use Best at YouTube for my YouTube channel.
Again, they're useful for making things convenient to type. But if you don't expect people to type in the URL, then it's not so useful. What comes in handy is, for example, a link shortener. So, for example, you can set up a subdomain of your own domain and set it up and hook it to something like Bitly, and use their link shortening mechanism, but use your subdomain. So
you got to show me how to do it,
m.lelandbest.com.
Yes.
And that's and some shortened link, and have it redirect to whatever you want. To the extent that you want to get some sort of analytics about related to social media, people's social media traffic that you advertise on a broadcast. Yeah, so you've got your twitter.lelandbest.com or twitter.bcblive.com and your crawl that redirects to your Twitter page. Well, that's probably a good thing. One, because you control that domain, that domain and that page. You could choose to send it something other than Twitter, but for the moment, Twitter is a platform of reasonable value and worthy of being linked to. 6-10 years from now, that may not be the case, and you could change that redirect to something more useful and not have to go and attempt to re-edit video and re-upload it, which you're not going to do. No. So yes, always direct people to your own domain, even if you're just redirecting them to someplace else, because especially in video where these links are going to be typed by somebody, you want them to be nice and short and concise, and not containing random characters. You want to be able to control those URLs if for some reason the original target of that page is no longer meaningful. So you can go in and change it around, and the video still has value and still drives traffic to some place that's useful to you. So yeah.
And when it comes to moving domains, we won't get into the conversation because we only got a few minutes left, but this is something that's definitely worthy of discussion. I did this myself recently, where I was using actually megabitaffiliate.com because I was pretty heavy into affiliate marketing for a little while through some systems and processes that I had in place. But I stepped away from that and decided to just go with megabitmarketing.com. And when I did so, I shifted the website from one domain to another. But one thing that we really have to watch for is you can't just take all that content from one domain and simply slap a new domain on it. Can you just, for a few minutes, because we got like 5 minutes left, tell us what we really have to do if we decide to change that brand or change that domain and move to another domain? What's most important?
When you're dealing with migrating content, for example, I don't know how much of this I'm allowed to talk about. I guess I'm allowed to talk about this. Let's just say that I had a client who sold their business to a larger publisher, and and so they had their 3 domains with their content that they'd built up over 6 and 8 years, right? 2 sites were 6 years old, one was 8 years old. And
not a page rank there. And we didn't even talk about page rank.
So they really owned a lot of searches. They were top on a bunch of searches. And I want to get back to backlinking also. We'll end this subject. But anyway
4 minutes. So do what you can in 4 minutes, and then I'll let you talk afterwards.
They sold their business to a larger publisher, and they operated the businesses separately for a while, but eventually they wanted to move the content over to a new domain. There are a bunch of different ways to do this. There's the really easy way where you take the domain and any random URL that anyone might type related to that domain, meaning every individual story, and it just redirects to one target location, being the homepage of the new target domain. Well, that sort of works, and you can maintain some of the Google juice that way. Now, this is where you need to know the difference between 301 and 302 redirects. These are status codes in HTTP requests. So let's see, 301 is permanent, 302 is temporary. Am I have that right? I may have it backwards.
You do? Yeah. No, I think 301 is permanent. 301
is permanent, 302 is temporary. So you want to make a permanent redirect. And once you've made set a permanent redirect for a particular page to a particular other page on a new domain, that will transfer the Google juice effectively. But if you do that, you also want to preserve the individual URLs that you've got in place. So, for example, if you want to migrate the content, you need to migrate each individual page. And that usually requires just setting up a redirection file. Excuse me. Depending what web server you're running, that just maps one URL to the next URL and so on. But you want to make sure you do it with a 301 redirect in order to preserve that traffic. And you can probably shut down the old domain or do something more basic with the redirection after like 6 months or something, because Google will have indexed it multiple times and migrated everything over. The other thing that you want to do is make sure that you have proper ownership within the Google Webmaster Tools of each domain that you're redirecting from and to. But
I might have to get you on for some of that stuff in the future when it comes to how those redirects work, how you can go about setting yourself up on the places Google wants to see you working, and those are in their sitemap locations where you can actually see what's going on with the traffic and analytics and the webmaster pages as well. So I'd love to have you back to talk about some of that stuff in the future, if you wouldn't mind, Colin.
Sure, I know absolutely. I just wanted to touch on the other thing that same client we had a partnership with, and this I guess I can talk about. We had a partnership with, wow. I just had a complete.
Don't you hate that? Well, while you're having a complete blank, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for everybody else. So just give me 1 second and I'll take care of this. This has been Leland Best out here at Wake Up West Coast, hanging out at getvocal.com with Colin T. Hill, just talking about what's going on with domain names. We just had a heck of a discussion about where that can go. We'll have him back again to do some more conversations about things you can do to make sure your domain serves its purpose, because there's a lot of things that it holds when it comes to your brand. And if you don't know how to use it right, it's not going to work to your advantage. So we'll see you in the next broadcast, everybody. Come by every Monday at 12 noon Eastern out here at Wake Up West Coast on getvocal.com. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Now, if I can remember what the hell I was